They say some places were never meant to hold people. Some structures, no matter how beautiful, sit on ground that remembers every scream, every disappearance, every drop of blood that fell into the soil. That's what brought him here, to a Treehouse hotel hidden in the endless woods of Oregon. A weekend escape, a luxury retreat perched 30 feet above the forest floor. Secluded, quiet, untouched. At least that's what the glossy brochure promised. But the moment his car rolled up the gravel driveway, he knew something wasn't right. The trees pressed in too close, their branches tangling above like skeletal arms locking out the sky. The air was thick, heavy. Not the clean mountain freshness he expected, but damp, stagnant, almost sour. He stepped out of the car, gravel crunching beneath his boots, and looked up at his room, his treehouse suite. It clung to the trunk of an ancient oak, its polished wooden walls gleaming golden in the last light of sunset. Rope bridges stretched between other cabins, swaying with the wind, like veins feeding into the heart of something much older. The manager, a wiry man with a hollow smile, handed him a brass key. "Room 7, he said flatly. "You're the only guest tonight. Perfect peace, perfect privacy." The words sounded rehearsed, like something he'd said too many times before. The traveler forced a smile and took the key. He told himself this was exactly what he wanted: silence, isolation, a break from the chaos of his city life. Yet as he climbed the spiral staircase nailed into the tree's bark, a strange sensation settled into his chest. The wood felt warm beneath his hands. Not just sun-warmed, alive. Inside, the room was beautiful, expensive rugs, lanterns glowing a soft amber, windows overlooking the dark stretch of forest below. A king-size bed sat in the center, its posts carved with twisting vines that mirrored the branches outside. It was perfect, too perfect. He set his bags down, listening. The silence was thick. No cars, no chatter. Not even the chirp of crickets or the croak of frogs. Just the whisper of leaves brushing against the walls like fingernails scratching wood. A note lay on the bedside table. Elegant handwriting. "Welcome to your forest retreat. Enjoy the peace. Once inside, please remain in your room after dark. For your safety." He frowned. Safety from what? There were no bears this close to the resort. No wolves, just stories. Old forest legends about travelers who disappeared without explanation. Myths told by locals to keep outsiders away. He shook it off, poured himself a drink from the minibar, and stepped onto the balcony. The view stretched endlessly, rows of black pines fading into the horizon, the sun bleeding orange into the sky. It should have been breathtaking, but he couldn't enjoy it, because the longer he stood there, the more he felt it, the weight of the forest watching him. Something unseen, pressing from every angle, the kind of pressure that makes the back of your neck tighten, the kind that whispers, "You're not alone, and you never were." He turned quickly, retreating inside, shutting the balcony door behind him. The latch clicked louder than it should have. He laughed nervously, trying to shake the paranoia. It was just the atmosphere, just his imagination. But then he noticed the carvings. Along the walls, etched faintly into the wood, barely visible in the lantern glow, names. Hundreds of names, scratched deep by something sharp. They overlapped each other, some so old the wood had begun to heal over them, swallowing the letters whole. The last name was fresh, still splintered at the edges. He bent down to read it. His breath froze, because carved into the wall, in desperate, jagged lines, was a message, not a name. "Don't stay past midnight." The lantern flickered, the floor creaked, and in that silence, 30 feet above the forest floor, he swore he heard something inside the walls. Breathing, slow, heavy, patient. The first night was supposed to be calm. A glass of wine, a soft bed, the kind of silence city dwellers dream about. But silence in the forest isn't peace. Silence in the forest is warning. The traveler lay in the king-sized bed, covers pulled up, lantern dimmed to a soft amber glow. He closed his eyes and tried to relax, but the treehouse never rested. The wood beneath him began to shift, not with the gentle creak of wind through branches. No, this was slower, rhythmic. A groan that stretched through the floorboards like the tree itself was drawing breath. Creak. Pause. Creak. Each sound swelled in the darkness, so deep it rattled the glass on the nightstand. He sat up, heart thudding, just the structure settling. He whispered to himself, just wood, just air. But the rhythm didn't stop. It grew louder, closer, as though footsteps, heavy, deliberate, were circling the bed from underneath. He swung his legs to the floor, testing the boards with his bare feet. Warm, too warm, like something alive pulsed just below the surface. He pressed his palm against the wall. The same warmth, a thrum beneath the wood, faint but undeniable, like the beat of a heart. That's when he heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. He snapped his head toward the window. 30 feet above the ground, there should have been nothing there but branches. No balcony, no ladder, no reason for sound. But the scratching came again, slow, deliberate, like fingernails dragging across glass. He rose, every hair on his body lifting, and stepped toward the window. The lantern's glow shook with his hand as he carried it closer. His breath fogged the glass. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then tap, tap, tap. 3 sharp knocks on the outside of the window. He stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern. His pulse pounded in his ears. Impossible. He was suspended, high above the forest floor. No one could be there. No one human, at least. He forced himself forward again, peering through the glass into the black tangle of trees. Nothing. Just darkness stretching in every direction. But his reflection didn't match. For one split second, he saw his own face staring back, yet it was smiling. Wide. Too wide. Teeth glinting in the dim light, though his real mouth hung open in horror. And then it was gone. He staggered backward until his legs hit the bed frame. The room groaned again. The ceiling above shivered, flakes of dust drifting down. The shadows on the wall shifted. Not with the lantern's flame, not with any light. They crawled like insects, long and spindly, dragging themselves across the wooden panels. His throat went dry. His lungs strained for air. Another sound, low, whispering, words that weren't words, a murmur that seeped from the cracks between the boards. Dozens of voices blending together, muffled, like they were speaking from inside the walls. He leaned closer, trembling. The whispers rose, faster, louder, desperate. And then, thump. Something slammed against the window so hard the glass rattled. He froze. Pressed against the pane was a hand, pale, twisted, fingers long and crooked, nails digging into the surface. It didn't belong to anything human. He stumbled back into the bed, heart racing, breath ragged. The lantern flickered violently, shadows exploding across the walls. He clutched the blankets like they might shield him. But the creaking wood pressed closer, louder, echoing through the room like an enormous body shifting inside the tree. And then, as suddenly as it started, silence, utter suffocating silence. The window was empty. The whispers were gone. The shadows froze. Only the sound of his own heartbeat remained. He stayed awake the rest of the night, eyes fixed on the window, body rigid, too terrified to blink. But the longer he sat there, the clearer it became. The creaking hadn't stopped. It had only grown quieter, slower, like whatever lived inside the treehouse had settled back down to wait. Morning light never really reached the treehouse. The windows opened only to endless pine, thick and dark. Branches tangled so tightly they blocked out the sun. When the traveler woke, his body ached as if he hadn't slept at all. His mind replayed the sounds of the night, the creaking, the scratching, the whispers. It had to be a dream. Stress, exhaustion, paranoia. He kept repeating that to himself as he dragged his stiff body to the small writing. desk in the corner of the room. The lantern from last night had burned itself out, leaving a smear of black wax on the wood. That's when he saw it. The drawer. It wasn't flush with the frame. It sat slightly ajar, as though someone had opened it while he slept. His skin prickled. Slowly, he pulled it open. Inside lay a guest book, not the cheerful leather-bound kind left for visitors to scribble about their stay. This one was old. Dust caked its edges. The leather cover was cracked, flaking. The pages smelled of mildew and rot. He hesitated, then flipped it open. The first pages seemed normal. Names, dates, cheerful notes. Loved the peace and quiet. Perfect honeymoon spot. The forest feels alive. But as he turned the pages, the handwriting grew frantic, sloppier. The notes shifted. Something scratches the windows at night. Don't listen when it whispers your name. The tree isn't a tree. The traveler's throat tightened. His hands trembled as he turned another page. There were no more cheerful notes. Only desperate scrawls, words overlapping, ink smeared with what looked like blood, pages torn, shredded as though someone had tried to rip their own. Warning out of the book before it was too late. And then the last entry. It wasn't finished. Just a single sentence ending mid-thought. It's in the walls. The pen had carved deep into the page, the letters jagged, frantic. Ink splattered across the margin. And then nothing. The rest of the book was empty. He slammed it shut, chest heaving. But the sound of the book echoed too long, too deep. Like it had fallen into a hollow chamber beneath the floor. He froze, ears straining. There it was again. A faint murmur, a hum, like a crowd whispering just beneath him. His eyes darted around the room. The carvings, the names scratched into the walls he'd noticed the night before. He ran his fingers over one. The grooves were deep, desperate, not decoration, not initials of couples in love, but the marks of people trying to prove they existed before the tree took them. A shiver racked his body. He turned toward the door. He'd had enough. He was leaving. But the brass handle refused to turn. He yanked harder. It didn't budge. He grabbed his bags, rushing to the window. He would climb down if he had to, 30 feet be damned. But when he looked out, the rope ladder was gone, vanished, as though it had never been there. His heart pounded against his ribs. He stumbled backward, gasping, the guest book still clutched in his hands. And that's when he noticed it. The latest entry in the book wasn't as old as he thought. The ink wasn't faded. It was fresh, the handwriting shaky but recent. He brought the page closer. His breath caught. The ink was still wet. The unfinished line, "It's in the walls," began to spread. The letters stretching, smearing, as if they were bleeding deeper into the paper. And then, the walls around him groaned. The whispering voices rose, louder now, clearer. They weren't speaking nonsense. They were speaking his name, over and over, calling him, begging him, warning him. He dropped the book in horror, but it didn't hit the floor. It sank, slowly, seamlessly. The board swallowed it whole, leaving only a faint ripple in the wood before it sealed shut again. The treehouse fell silent, and he realized the truth. The guest book wasn't for memory. It was for inventory. Every name inside was a soul the tree had already claimed, and he had just been added. Midnight came like a blade. No slow fade, no gentle darkness, just a sudden snap, as if the forest had cut the lights itself. One moment, the lanterns glowed warm and steady. The next, the room was drenched in black. The traveler jolted upright in bed, every nerve on fire. The silence pressed down, thick and absolute. He could hear nothing, not the wind, not the trees, not even his own breath at first. Then slowly, something deeper, something beneath him. The floor moved. Not a simple creak this time, not the innocent groan of old timber. The board swelled, lifted, bulged like something was pushing up from below. He leapt from the bed, heart slamming against his ribs, and the board snapped under his weight. A jagged crack split across the rug. From the opening, roots emerged, thick, gnarled, twisting up into the room like skeletal arms clawing for air. He stumbled back, tripping over the chair, and the whispering began. It wasn't muffled anymore. It was everywhere, surrounding him, rising from the walls, from the floor, from the very air he breathed. Dozens of voices at first, then hundreds overlapping, hissing, groaning, chanting his name. The roots spread, wrapping around the legs of the bed, tightening until the wood screamed. The mattress bulged as though something massive shifted beneath it. "No, no, no, no," he whispered, shaking his head, backing into the corner. The lantern on the desk flickered to life on its own, flame sputtering, and he saw them, shadows crawling across the walls. Not cast by anything real. They were moving on their own. Elongated human forms, faceless, bent, reaching for him with arms that stretched too long, too thin. He turned toward the door. The brass handle rattled violently, but the door still wouldn't open. He slammed his shoulder into it, once, twice, 3 times, screaming. But the wood didn't give. It only pulsed, warm, beating, alive. The voices grew louder. Now he could hear distinct words, fragments in the chaos. "Stay. Ours. Feed." He spun back toward the bed and froze. The mattress had split open. Roots writhed up through the sheets like veins, twisting, wrapping around the carved posts, squeezing until the polished wood splintered. The vines pulsed with wetness, slick, glistening in the dim glow. Then the whispering stopped. For one awful moment, silence returned. And then the treehouse took a breath. The entire room inhaled, walls bowing inward, floor lifting, ceiling dropping, as if the structure itself was a lung. The traveler clutched his chest, gasping, struggling to breathe, his lungs squeezed by the air itself. He staggered to the window, desperate, clawing at the latch. The glass rattled beneath his hands but wouldn't open. He pounded with his fists until his knuckles bled. His reflection in the glass stared back, but again, it didn't match. It wasn't panicked, it was smiling. The grin stretched wider and wider until the reflection's mouth tore at the corners. And then, it whispered, lips moving soundlessly. He froze, reading the shape of the words. "You're next." A deafening crack split the air. The roots surged higher, snapping the desk in half, tearing the rug to shreds. One whipped across his leg, wrapping tight, pulling him to the floor. He screamed, clawing at it, nails breaking as he tried to tear it away. More roots coiled around his wrists, his chest, his throat. The wood beneath him throbbed, alive, hungry. The voices roared, a tidal wave of sound crashing against his skull. He tried to scream again, but the tree didn't let him. The roots pulled tighter. The walls closed in. And in the final second before everything went black, he realized the tree wasn't just alive, it was awake. And it had noticed him. Morning came, but he wasn't there to see it. The sun broke through the pines in thin golden threads, glinting against the polished wood of the treehouse. The birds finally returned, chirping as if the night had been ordinary. But room 7 stood silent. No bags, no clothes, no trace of the man who had checked in the day before. The bed was perfectly made, sheets tucked sharp and clean, as though no one had ever touched them. The lantern burned steady on the desk, flame frozen as if it had never flickered. The guest book lay open. On the final page, his name had appeared. Not written in ink, not in his hand. Carved deep into the paper, the grooves still damp, as though the tree itself had forced it into the book. The line beneath was smeared, dripping, unfinished, just like all the others before him. Hours later, footsteps echoed up the gravel path. A new traveler arrived, suitcase rolling behind him, phone in hand, smiling at the thought of isolation in the woods. The manager greeted him at the base of the oak with that same thin, lifeless smile. "Room 7, he said softly. "You'll love it. Perfect peace. Perfect privacy." The new guest didn't notice the way the manager's eyes flicked up the trunk of the ancient oak, didn't notice how his smile faltered for just a second. He climbed the spiral staircase, hand trailing along the bark. Warm, always warm. Inside, the room welcomed him with glowing lanterns, polished floors, a bed too perfect to disturb. A note waited on the table. "For your safety, please remain in your room after dark." He laughed, tossing his bag onto the bed, convinced he had found paradise. But if he had looked closer at the walls, closer at the grooves beneath the varnish, he might have seen the names. The endless names, some carved deep, some almost erased, swallowed by time. And if he had pressed his ear to the wood just for a second, he might have heard it. The faintest sound, breathing, slow, heavy, patient, waiting for him. Because no one ever truly left room 7. They only vanished. And the tree remembered. Don't forget. Subscribe for daily scary stories and hit the bell icon to never miss a horror adventure.